Okay folks, gotta go pay the bill at the parts store. Hey folks, this is Mike from KEI Fabrication. This is my LS swapped Mazda B2200.
As long as it's tied down well enough, I guess it'll be alright.
Alright, now we got a design chair. I can do some highly classified scientific calculations. Alright folks, so what I've done is I have massaged that rear rail that was existing before I put mine in. I prepped all the surfaces. I kind of stitch weld the bed plate to the rail, the pre-existing rail, to stitch it in. And then I use my porta power to just kind of get it close all the way across, and it's the cross member is cut to length, so it's perfect for the length for the vertical posts. I've marked the center of the truck body and verified that it is in fact centered between these vertical supports, and I've lined it up with the center of the tube. So I'm going to get some C-clamps, pull all this thing together, and I'm going to tack it in position. So you're giving up walking, huh? Alright, so what I've done here is I've laid out the positioning for these marker lights that were part of the factory hardware that was installed in the truck. There's 3 of these. I think that's a DOT law that anything wider than a certain width requires 3 single markers, individual lights across the back. So I'm going to drill these out now on the drill press. I've got a brand new Milwaukee hole saw ready to go there. It's just a little bit more of a controlled environment to drill these holes accurately here and control the amount of abuse that the hole saw gets after I put it in the truck. So this is the cross member that goes between the 2 horizontal rails of the dump body mechanism itself. So this will act as a stiffener on either side. It's 120 wall 2x4 box tubing, and even with the holes in it, the structural integrity of this will be far superior than the 14 gauge sheet metal that these were mounted in before, and as the bed fatigued and collapsed, it was actually squishing these holes and forcing these things out of the holes. These are just the snap fit type, and requires a 3-inch hole. So we're going to go ahead and start drilling those right now. Okay, because this is a brand new hole saw, I'm going to use some oil on here. I haven't really decided if this is any help to cut through metal. I use it on drill bits and stuff. It's just a convenient package, really. You know, you put the straw on it, and it has a little bit of a foaming and clinging action. So the thing that I don't know is, does it act as a lubricant for the cutting tool, or is it preventing it from doing its job? You know, there's something to be said for cutting oil. And then there's also something to be said for lubricating. So Alright, that took a lot longer than it should, mostly because the 3-inch diameter hole saw is a little too big for this little drill press. Next time I do this, I'm going to go through the time it takes to set up properly in the Bridgeport, and I actually have a collet. It's not a collet, but a chuck that goes into the collet that will accept this. And the stability and things. The biggest problem with this is as soon as this thing starts to bite in and get by that chatter that you all heard, my belt slips. Now I have this set up so the belt slips on purpose because the last thing I want to do is have it rip things out of my hands. I'd rather stall out the drill press. So anyway, wrong tool for this particular job. The limit that I normally do on this is probably 2-inch, and I've got a 3-inch hole saw in there. As far as whether or not this fogging oil worked, the hole saw is actually, I can hold on to it. So we're looking at maybe 120 degrees, so I don't think I hurt it in terms of over-temping it. So this may have worked as a coolant, if nothing else. Alright, so the next thing I need to do is, this is the middle cross member here. I have wings that are going to go on either side of the dump body horizontal structure, and in those wings is the rectangular tail lights, and I'll show you how I'm going to go about laying those out in just a moment. So one thing you folks probably see around my neck all the time is these ear plugs, and I put these on like most people would put their keys in their pockets in the morning when they get dressed, or their wallet, because I just never know when I'm not going to be doing something noisy. I learned my lesson 25 years ago of hearing damage, and it scared me, so I've been wearing something like that for the last 25 years daily. You might be doing something as trivial as just drilling holes in a piece of tubing with a hole saw, but the chatter that this makes, if you're doing, next thing you know, you look at your watch and you've been doing this for an hour and a half, and without the ear protection, you've probably done irreversible damage to your ears and your hearing. So take a couple of minutes, go get yourself some good quality ear protection, or the foam. You roll them up, put the foam earplugs in, and these is the reason why I have these is, number one, they're always with me, and number two, I don't have to touch anything with my fingers that's going into my ears, so I don't get all this stuff all over the roll-up ones. I can take them in and out at my leisure, and I think my hearing has not been negatively affected by working in a fabrication shop all these years. So I wear these when I run the chainsaw, I wear them when I'm in the backhoe, or anything or even on the lawnmower. I wear these when I'm mowing with my regular lawn tractor, just because it's 2 or 3 hours in any one of those situations, and it only takes like 20 minutes of repeated high decibel noise to do irreparable damage to your ears. So anyway, just a quick safety tip. You've seen me violate probably a million different safety tips, but my eyes and my ears are the things that I try and protect the most. Okay, so this is the punch out for the taillights in the rear of the truck. Part of the reason why the truck came to me is the back of the bed was deteriorating, and the rear of the body was only made out of this 14 gauge steel, and as the body started to deteriorate with these big holes cut in the sheet metal rear support, rear cross member, it started buckling and actually popping the taillights out or crushing the taillights. So I'm going to use this as a template to cut these shapes into the box tubing that I'm replacing this single layer sheet metal with. Okay, so you saw me cut this strip out of a piece of 2x4 box tubing, and the reason why I had to do that is this is not a nominal dimension from the top of the bed to the beginning of the frame rail that is the horizontal supports for the dump body. This was never tied left to right with anything with sheet metal, and it had one bead of weld out here and one bead of weld out here. Hopefully you can see the distortion and everything that took place and the pounding that the bed sustained as material came off the back, because again it was only 14 gauge sheet metal. So what I'm going to do is weld this all together, and I'll make this look like one piece from here to here. I'll fill that weld in. This is heavy wall tubing with a generous nose radius, so I'll get a root pass and maybe a couple of fillet passes in there, and I'll stitch this in and weld it, smooth it out, and it'll look like one continuous piece. Right now I am working on the wings, and I'll show you this in a minute. And it's going to be 2x4 box tubing out here. That's where the vertical post will tie in for the corner of the bed. That never had anything but an open-ended piece of sheet metal, and it was twisting around. So we're giving it super strong opportunity to have some leverage, the resistance to the stuff that's in the bed pushing the corners out, and also some vertical strength. Again, this is nothing but sheet metal in the corners of the bed where the tailgate posts was just collapsing. So we've straightened that out. We've got plenty of material to strengthen that and kind of re-engineer it to put it in a condition to where it can kind of have more capacity than it had previously. So this should solve the issue of it getting destroyed, provide a good foundation for our vertical posts, and prevent the back of the bed from getting destroyed. This is just kind of mocked up. I'll put it all together. My goal for doing this, the reason why I haven't welded this first cross member in, is I really want to tack this in place here and then bring it off of the truck, weld it together and put this in as one unit, and then go ahead and permanently weld it in. My goal is to weld it to these vertical supports and grind it smooth, so again it'll look as smooth as it did here from here to here, but have like 4 times the strength, because I've got a horizontal wall here, a horizontal wall on this tubing, another horizontal wall here. The fact that I've cut this open is going to be strengthened by this piece grafted into the bottom, and then it's going to be stitched in, not stitched in, it's going to be permanently welded to all of the other locations that are integral with the stiffening of the rear of the dump body. So that's enough talk. Time to get back to work. Alright, so what I've done here is used the original template for the tail lights. I used my vernier caliper to scribe a line in this direction and then a line along the edge of the part, and scribed it out, and I will be able to cut this out so it stays just off the nose of the radius of the tube. And I'm going to go ahead and use my bandsaw to cut this out. Before I do that, there's a second set of tail lights that go in here, and I'm going to scribe that out as well. And when I'm doing the cutting, hopefully I can do them both at the same time. So you can see with the residual stress here, it's even opened up that gap, so I'll have to put it back into the correct shape. And then the purpose of this is to get access, cut through here to get access with the bandsaw. And I'll have to do the same thing down here as I open this up. And I'll just have to sand that off real good, maybe put a little bevel on it, do a nice weld. I can do it internally and externally, and then I can use a flapper disc to smooth this off, and it'll look like it was never cut. So that's the deal. And you can see I'm cutting through 2 layers of metal. The reason why I had to do that is the tail light assembly. The tail light assembly is as deep as the thickness of the tubing, so in order to get the plug on there and maintain enough access things, I'll have to put that into position. So we'll be able to get that in there. It should hold nice and tight, as you know, the anti-vibration aspects of this whole rubber boot. And we should have a nice installation when it's all done. Hopefully it'll look like it happened on purpose instead of by accident. Alright folks, I got the wings roughed in where the tail lights are going to go. Where the split was, where I cut it with the bandsaw, I put a shim the same thickness as the bandsaw blade removes, and then I used a C-clamp to put it together, and then when I welded it, I was able to weld this half, plus the little shim in the middle, and then I welded it like 3/4 of an inch along the inside as well, so when I ground this off I still had some integrity. I did the same thing back here, and then I just took a flapper wheel and smoothed it off. So, both sides are done. They kind of look like Vega taillights, don't they? So these are going to go right here. Taillights will go here. And this is going to take a while, a lot of welding. But I'm going to weld this here and put a couple of passes in, and then do the same thing with the flapper wheel and smooth it out. And then way out here is where that vertical post is going to attach to. And now what I might do is to kind of match the configuration from the previous design, is cut a piece of box tubing that grafts into this, similar to what's going on here, picks up this bottom corner and acts as like a gusset coming up. So a lot of welding back here, a lot of welding and grinding. Most of this is because it's not a nominal size, and when I went to order tubing, because of the situation we're in with supply and delivery is a little bit sketchy. Can't always get what we need in the best time frame. Rather than hold this job up waiting for stuff to come in, so this needs to get back in service relatively quickly. So using multiple levels here was the only way that I could increase the integrity, fill this up to the factory height, and then still get my marker lights in and my tail lights in so they're not going to self-destruct. The whole point of this is get as much of this done so the body is stiff, connected. This is as straight as it needs to be from the factory. And then this will be the foundation for the vertical posts where the tailgate and hinge assembly all come together. So I'm going to quit for today, and we'll pick this up again tomorrow. Okay, so I spent a significant amount of time making a 8.5 by 2 in order to fill the area in the back of the truck. I just finished putting some limber holes in here. There's a channel that this will weld into and cap off from the factory. I had some drain holes in it, so I put them in. And the factory drain holes used to come all the way out the back. And what I'm going to do is I added a limber hole here to allow this stuff to find its way along and drain out. The other thing I did was drill the access hole here for the wiring for the marker lights, and I also drilled all the way through with a limber hole here in case any water makes it into the tail lights through that wiring access port. The water will come through this piece of tubing and out the bottom of this once it's installed. So I'm going to go ahead and tack this in position on the back of the truck, assemble some of these fabricated components. So next what's going to happen is these wings are going to go here. once again, folks, I'm really glad that my little hot rod project is a pickup truck, because I can do some cool things like my wife and I can take the bikes up to the bike trail. Now that the governor has opened up some of the local state parks and public access things, we can take advantage of some of this nice weather and go do those kinds of things. And I get to drive my hot rod also. Okay, so what I've done is I've moved the truck from in front of the other bay into this bay, and the reason why I did that is I wanted the rear tires on a level portion of the garage. This part of the driveway is more level than the other side, and I put a level across the frame rails, and I put some shims under the front tire, so left to right the truck is level. Okay, the reason why I went through the trouble of doing that is these beds tend to be flexible flyers, if you will, and if the body is twisted, the twist will be transmitted into the bed just because of the way it rests on the dump body frame. And I didn't want to go ahead and weld all kinds of structure on this and kind of build in a twist. So it's just like when you're fabricating a race car or repairing a bent up race car, you want to really make sure that you're not putting any additional twist in the vehicle. And when you're all done fixing it, now you have a problem making the thing handle or get around the track or go down the track because you've built in some sort of imbalance in the chassis. So I raised the bed up so I could put the level across the frame rails, checked it in a few places. Everything looks good. So now I'm going to lower the body back down. I have not done any welding from these supports that run fore and aft to the outside because I wanted to wait until I was absolutely certain that the bed was in its relaxed state and the chassis was level left to right. So now that it is, I'm going to go ahead and weld a little more permanently the structure at the back here, and then I'm going to start working on building the vertical posts and moving forward with the horizontal supports that'll tie into the headboard. Here we go. Alright, I blocked up the hoist mechanism in case the hydraulics decided they wanted to bleed down. Then I climbed in here and I stitched everything in on both sides, and that should be, other than putting some paint on it, should be the last I have to get in there. The welding is definitely done inside there. I also did this portion here and tied it in, and that was never part of the original structure, as I've said over and over again. So now we've got a nice strong cross beam. I'm going to add some more stitching in here, and now that this foundational aspect of this is completed, I can start moving forward with the rest of the rebuilding of this body. Okay, so we made some progress today. I got a lot of final welding done. I put the final support from left to right along underneath the bar that has the taillights in it, and I got my vertical support in, and I just have this temporarily pushed across the top and tacked in place. The headboard is a good ½ inch out from top to bottom, so before I put that in to make sure it's absolutely parallel with the bed and perpendicular to the headboard, I've got to push that headboard out just a little bit before I tack weld it. So it's just C-clamped up there, tack welded there. Tomorrow I'm going to test fit a piece of sheet in there to make sure that I've got the height correct, and we'll go from there.